Beside him, Fleet Leader Zarthek studied the tactical displays with the same intensity he had once focused on conquering humanity. Admiral Morrison, our species have learned to work together in an incredibly short time. Perhaps that is our greatest weapon against an enemy that has consumed civilizations far older than either of ours. Jake nodded as he watched the defense fleets move into position throughout the galaxy. Hundreds of ships crewed by former enemies who had become allies. Weapons that shouldn't exist, being prepared to fight creatures that defied natural law. A desperate alliance between two species that had nearly destroyed each other. Maybe our greatest strength is that we almost lost everything, Jake said quietly. We know what it means to face impossible odds and survive. The war for the galaxy was about to be. Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the New Horizon, watching the stars drift past through the main window. 3 months had passed since they left Earth, and he still could not believe they were actually out here. Real space travel. Real exploration. After hundreds of years of dreaming, humans had finally broken free from their home solar system. The ship was not the biggest or the fastest that humanity had ever built, but it was the first designed specifically for deep space exploration. Jake remembered the day they launched from the orbital shipyard above Earth. Millions of people had watched from the planet below. Children pointed at the sky and dreamed of the day they might follow in their footsteps. Now, those dreams felt very real and very far away. "Captain, we are approaching the next survey point," said Lisa Grant from her science station. She was the best scientist Earth had to offer, and Jake trusted her judgment completely. Her blonde hair was always pulled back in a neat ponytail, and her blue eyes seemed to see patterns that others missed. "Good work, Lisa. Danny, how are our engines holding up?" Jake turned to look at Danny Rodriguez, their chief engineer. The man was barely 30 years old, but he understood the new quantum fold drive better than anyone else in the fleet. "Running smooth as silk, Captain. The fold drive is working even better than we hoped. We have enough power to keep exploring, for another 6 months at least." Danny's enthusiasm was infectious. He loved this ship like it was his own child. Amy Carter, their communications officer, looked up from her console. "Still no signals from any other ships, Captain. We are definitely alone out here." Her voice carried a hint of loneliness that Jake understood completely. Being the only humans this far from home was both exciting and terrifying. The New Horizon was not a military ship. It carried no weapons except for small defensive systems designed to protect against space debris. Their mission was simple: explore, document, and report back to Earth. They were pioneers, not soldiers. Jake walked over to the large star chart displayed on the main screen. They had traveled farther from Earth than any human before them. Each system they visited was marked in green if it contained planets, yellow if it had unusual stellar phenomena, and red if it posed any dangers. So far, they had found plenty of green and yellow markers, but thankfully no red ones. "Lisa, what makes this next system special?" Jake asked. "Long-range sensors show it has at least 7 planets, and 3 of them are in the habitable zone. If we are lucky, we might find signs of water or even primitive life." Lisa's excitement was clear in her voice. Finding life, even microscopic life, would be the discovery of the century. The quantum fold drive engaged with a soft humming sound that Jake had grown to love. Reality seemed to bend around them for just a moment, and then they were somewhere completely different. The stars outside had changed position, and a new sun glowed ahead of them. Fold jump complete. We are now in the Kepler 442 system, Amy reported from her station. Jake studied the new star system as their sensors began collecting data. It was a young, bright star with a family of planets orbiting around it. Two gas giants dominated the outer system, while smaller rocky worlds stayed closer to their sun. "Captain, I am picking up something unusual," Lisa said, her voice suddenly serious. "What kind of unusual?" Jake moved to stand behind her station. "There is a signal coming from somewhere near the fourth planet. It is very faint, but it is definitely artificial." Lisa's fingers danced across her controls as she tried to isolate the signal. Amy turned in her chair. "I can confirm that, Captain. It is not coming from any human source. The frequency and pattern are completely unknown." Jake felt his heart rate increase. This was the moment every explorer dreamed of and feared. First contact with alien intelligence. But something felt wrong. About the signal. It was too weak, too distant. "Can you determine what kind of signal it is?" Jake asked. "It appears to be some kind of distress call," Lisa replied after several minutes of analysis. "The pattern repeats every 47 minutes. Whatever is sending it has been broadcasting for a very long time." Danny joined them at the science station. "How long are we talking about?" "Based on the signal degradation and power loss, I would estimate at least 200 years, possibly longer." Lisa looked up at Jake with worried eyes. 200 years? Amy repeated in disbelief. "That means whatever sent this signal was broadcasting before humans even left Earth." Jake stared at the data scrolling across Lisa's screen. Somewhere out there, an alien intelligence had been calling for help for over 2 centuries. The signal was automated, mechanical, repeating the same message over and over again with the patience only a machine could have. "Can we decode the message?" Jake asked. "I'm working on it now," Lisa replied. "The mathematical structure suggests intelligence, but the language is completely foreign. It will take time." "How much time?" "Days, maybe weeks. This is unlike anything we have ever encountered." Jake made a decision that would change everything. "Set course for the source of the signal. We need to investigate this." "Captain," Amy said carefully, "our mission parameters say we should report any alien contact back to Earth immediately." "I know what our mission says," Jake replied, "but we are 3 months from Earth and this signal has been broadcasting for 2 centuries. Whatever sent it needs help, and we might be the first ones to hear it." The New Horizon changed course toward the 4th planet. As they drew closer, their sensors revealed more details. The planet was dead, its atmosphere long since blown away by solar winds. But orbiting the planet was something that made everyone on the bridge fall silent. It was a space station, ancient and dark, slowly tumbling through the void. The station was enormous, easily 10 times larger than anything humans had ever built. Its design was elegant and alien, with curved surfaces and flowing lines that seemed almost organic. "The signal is coming from that station," Lisa confirmed. "Are there any life signs?" Jake asked. Amy shook her head. "Nothing. The station appears to be completely dead, except for the automated beacon." Jake studied the alien structure on their main screen. Whatever race had built this station was far more advanced than humanity. The technology required to construct something that large in space was beyond anything Earth could achieve. "Captain, I am detecting similar structures in the surrounding systems," Lisa announced. "At least a dozen space stations, all dark, all broadcasting the same signal." The implications hit Jake like a physical blow. This was not just one alien outpost. This was evidence of an entire civilization spread across multiple star systems. And all of it was dead. "Lisa, how long ago did these stations go dark?" "Based on orbital decay and structural analysis, I would estimate between 150 to 200 years ago, right around the time the distress signal started broadcasting." Jake realized they had stumbled upon the greatest mystery in human history. An advanced alien civilization had died out just as humans were taking their first steps into space. And before they died, they had sent out a call for help that had been echoing through the void ever since. "Amy, start recording everything. Lisa, I want a full analysis of that signal. Danny, prepare the shuttle. We are going aboard that station." As the New Horizon approached the dead alien outpost, Jake could not shake the feeling that they were about to uncover something that would change humanity forever. The signal continued its lonely broadcast, a voice crying out across the darkness of space, hoping that someone, somewhere, would finally answer. But who had they been calling to, and why had no one come to help them? The shuttle bay of the alien station was massive. Jake Morrison guided their small craft through the opening, which was easily large enough to hold 10 ships the size of the New Horizon. Emergency lighting flickered weakly along the walls, powered by some backup system that had kept running for over 2 centuries. "Atmosphere is present but thin," Danny Rodriguez reported from the shuttle's pilot seat. "Oxygen levels are low but breathable for short periods. Temperature is just above freezing." Jake, Lisa Grant, and Amy Carter had volunteered for the boarding party. They wore full environmental suits, not taking any chances with alien air or unknown pathogens. Each step they took echoed through the empty corridors as they made their way deeper into the station. The architecture was beautiful, but strange. Curved walls flowed into each other like water frozen in time. The ceilings were higher than necessary, for humans, suggesting the aliens who built this place were taller than people from Earth. Symbols and writing covered many surfaces, but none of it made sense to human eyes. "The technology level here is incredible," Lisa whispered as they passed what appeared to be a control room. Banks of dark screens and control panels lined the walls. "This is at least 1,000 years ahead of anything we have on Earth," Amy was recording everything with her portable scanner. "The construction materials are unlike anything in our database. These walls are made from some kind of metal alloy that should not be possible according to our physics." They had been exploring for 2 hours when they found the central computer core. It was a vast chamber filled with crystalline structures that pulsed with faint light. At the center stood a holographic display that activated as soon as they entered. The hologram showed the image of an alien being. It was tall and graceful, with elongated limbs and a face that was both beautiful and completely foreign. When it spoke, the words were in an unknown language, but mathematical symbols appeared alongside the speech. "It is trying to communicate with us," Lisa said excitedly. "The mathematics are universal. Look, it is showing us star charts and numerical sequences." For the next several hours, Lisa worked to decode the message while Jake and Amy continued exploring the station. What they found painted a picture of a civilization far more advanced than Earth had ever dreamed of becoming. Medical facilities, with technology that could probably cure any human disease. Engineering workshops with tools that could reshape matter at the atomic level. Libraries containing the knowledge of an entire species. All of it was dead and empty. "Jake, you need to see this," Lisa called out over their communication system. Her voice was tight with emotion. They found her in what appeared to be the station's main command center. The holographic alien was still speaking, but now Lisa had translated enough to understand the basics of the message. "They call themselves the Villani," Lisa explained. "This message is not just a distress call. It is a historical record of their final days." The hologram changed to show images of space filled with stars and planets. Then the image darkened, showing what looked like a spreading shadow consuming entire solar systems. "They were part of something called the Galactic Alliance," Lisa continued. 12 different species worked together to protect this region of space from something they call the consuming darkness. Amy leaned forward to study the holographic display. "What is the consuming darkness?" "From what I can understand, it is some kind of entity or force that destroys entire worlds. The Villani describe it as something that exists between dimensions, feeding on the life force of living planets." The hologram showed more images. Space battles on a scale that dwarfed anything in human imagination. Entire fleets of ships fighting against something that looked like living shadow. Planet after planet going dark as the consuming darkness spread across the galaxy. The 12 Alliance species fought this thing for thousands of years, Lisa translated. But something went wrong. The barriers they used to keep it contained began to fail. Jake studied the star charts being displayed. How big was this alliance? Massive. They controlled thousands of star systems across this entire region of the galaxy. Each species contributed different technologies and abilities to keep the consuming darkness locked away. The holographic message continued, and Lisa's face grew pale as she translated more of it. When they realized they could not stop it alone, they sent out a call for help, she said quietly. Not just to nearby systems, but to every spacefaring civilization they knew of. "How many civilizations?" Amy asked. "Over 3,000 species received their message." Jake felt a chill run down his spine. 3,000? There are that many intelligent species in the galaxy? According to this, yes. The Villani had been in contact with spacefaring civilizations for tens of thousands of years. They had a complete database of every species that had achieved faster-than-light travel. The hologram showed a galaxy-wide communication network with signals being sent to thousands of different star systems. The message was clear. The Galactic Alliance was dying, and they needed immediate assistance to prevent a catastrophe that would eventually threaten every living world in the galaxy. What happened next? Jake asked, though he was beginning to suspect the answer. Lisa's voice was barely a whisper. Nothing. No one came. The holographic display showed empty space where rescue fleets should have arrived. The Volani message became increasingly desperate as days turned to weeks, and weeks turned to months. Species that had traded with them for centuries ignored their calls. Civilizations that owed their existence to the Alliance's protection remained silent. They waited for help that never came, Lisa continued. One by one, the 12 Alliance species fell to the consuming darkness. The Volani were among the last to die. The final part of the message showed the Volani's last stand. Their home world was surrounded by the spreading darkness, and their people were evacuating to stations like this one. But even their most advanced technology could not protect them forever. Before they died, they programmed these stations to keep broadcasting their message, Lisa explained. They hoped that someday someone would hear it and understand what happened here. Jake stared at the holographic alien, frozen in its final plea for help. So the 3,000 species that received their call, they are all still out there somewhere, Amy said grimly, hiding in distant corners of the galaxy while the Alliance died protecting them. The implications were staggering. Humanity had dreamed of joining a galactic community, of learning from older and wiser civilizations. Instead, they had discovered a galaxy full of cowards who had abandoned their protectors when they needed help the most. "There is more," Lisa said, checking her translation notes. The consuming darkness did not disappear when the Alliance fell. According to this message, it is still out there, slowly growing stronger. The barriers the Alliance maintained are completely gone now, which means it is free to spread across the galaxy, Jake realized. Eventually, yes. The Volani estimated it would take several hundred years for the consuming darkness to consume the core systems and begin moving outward. But once it starts expanding again, nothing will be able to stop it. Amy was studying the star charts on the holographic display. "How long ago did the Alliance fall?" "About 200 years ago," Lisa replied. Jake felt the weight of the discovery crushing down on him. Humanity had spent centuries dreaming of finding other intelligent life in the universe. They had imagined wise alien mentors who would teach them the secrets of advanced technology and peaceful coexistence. Instead, they had found the grave of the galaxy's heroes and a universe full of species too cowardly to help when it mattered most. "Captain," Danny's voice crackled over their communication system from the shuttle. "I am picking up similar signals from multiple systems in this region. How many of these stations are out there?" Jake looked at the star chart showing the extent of the former Galactic Alliance territory. Hundreds of systems, all dark, all broadcasting the same desperate message into the void. "Dozens, maybe hundreds," he replied. "Danny, we need to gather as much information as possible. These aliens tried to save the galaxy, and no one came to help them." As they prepared to download the Volani database, Jake could not stop thinking, about the 3,000 species that had received the Alliance's call for help. Somewhere out there, advanced civilizations were going about their daily lives, pretending that the greatest heroes in galactic history had not died begging for their assistance. The message continued playing in an endless loop, just as it had for 2 centuries. A voice crying out across the darkness, hoping that someone somewhere would finally care enough to answer. But Jake was beginning to understand a horrible truth about the galaxy they lived in. When the greatest crisis in galactic history had occurred, when brave species had sacrificed everything to protect countless worlds, the universe had responded with silence. No one else had come. No one else had even tried, and now the consuming darkness was growing strong again, while 3,000 coward species hid in the shadows, hoping someone else would solve the problem for them. Jake made a decision that would echo through history. Humanity would not be like the others. If no one else would answer the call, then humans would have to decide what kind of species they wanted to be. The New Horizon moved through system after system, each one telling the same tragic story. Jake Morrison stood in the ship's briefing room, staring at the holographic display that showed their growing map of the former Galactic Alliance territory. Red markers indicated dead stations. Yellow markers showed destroyed planets. Green markers represented worlds that had once been full of life, but now floated as cold, silent tombs. There were no blue markers. Blue would have meant survivors. "This is the 15th system we have surveyed," Lisa Grant reported to the assembled crew. Her face was drawn with exhaustion and grief. "The pattern is always the same. Advanced civilizations, destroyed infrastructure, and automated distress beacons that have been broadcasting for 200 years. Amy Carter pulled up the communications data on her tablet. "I have been analyzing the beacon messages from all the systems. They are not just from the Villani. We have found distress calls from 11 different species, all members of the Galactic Alliance." Danny Rodriguez leaned back in his chair. 11 species. Lisa said there were 12 in the Alliance. "We have not found the 12th species yet," Jake replied. "But based on the pattern, I doubt they survived either." The crew had spent 3 weeks exploring the graveyard of galactic civilization. Each discovery was more heartbreaking than the last. They had found worlds where billions of people had lived in peace for thousands of years, now reduced to radioactive wastelands. Space stations the size of cities, drifting powerless through the void. Even entire moons had been hollowed out and converted into massive defensive platforms, all of them destroyed in humanity's final battle against the consuming darkness. "The scale of what they built is incredible," Danny said, reviewing the engineering data they had collected. "Some of these defensive installations could have protected entire solar systems. The technology required to build them is thousands of years ahead of anything we have on Earth." Lisa activated another holographic display, showing the recorded battles they had found in various computer systems. They did not die easily. The Alliance fought the consuming darkness for over 50 years before they finally fell. Every world was defended to the last citizen. Jake studied the tactical displays showing the final battles. Fleet movements on a scale that was difficult to comprehend, battles involving millions of ships fought across dozens of star systems simultaneously. The Alliance had thrown everything they had at the consuming darkness, and it had not been enough. "What I do not understand," Amy said, "is why the other species did not help. 3,000 civilizations received the call for assistance. Even if only half of them had responded, the Alliance might have survived." "That is what we need to find out," Jake replied. "Lisa, have you been able to locate any of the species that received the Alliance's message?" "I have been working on that," Lisa said, pulling up a galactic map. The Villani database contained contact information for over 3,000 spacefaring civilizations. Most of them are located in distant regions of the galaxy, far from Alliance territory. The map showed the galaxy divided into rough spheres of influence. The Galactic Alliance had controlled a region near the galactic core, rich in resources and strategically important. The other civilizations were scattered throughout the spiral arms, many of them isolated in small clusters of systems. "I have identified the locations of several major civilizations that definitely received the Alliance distress call," Lisa continued. "The Zephyrians control about 200 systems in the Perseus Arm. The Ethereal Collective has settlements throughout the Orion Spur. The hegemony of Keth dominates a large region near the galactic rim." "Any signs of recent activity from these civilizations?" Jake asked. Amy checked her communications equipment. "I have been monitoring for any artificial signals from those regions. Most of them are completely silent, but I did detect some faint transmissions from the Zephyrian systems. They appear to still be active." Jake made a decision. "Set course for Zephyrian space. It is time we got some answers." The journey to the Perseus Arm took 2 weeks, even with their advanced quantum fold drive. As they traveled farther from Alliance territory, the sense of emptiness and death gradually faded. They began to detect signs of active civilizations, artificial signals, ships moving between systems, and the energy signatures of living worlds. "I am picking up a massive artificial structure ahead," Lisa announced as they approached the outer edge of Zephyrian space. "It appears to be some kind of border station." The structure was enormous, easily the size of a small moon. It bristled with sensor arrays and defensive weapons, clearly designed to monitor and control access to Zephyrian territory. As the New Horizon approached, they were immediately challenged by an automated system. "Unknown vessel, you are entering Zephyrian space without authorization," came the transmission in heavily accented English. "State your origin and purpose or be destroyed." Amy opened a communication channel. "This is the human vessel New Horizon. We are explorers from the Sol System. We wish to speak with your government about the Galactic Alliance." There was a long pause before the reply came. "Humans? We have no record of your species. You will be escorted to Quarantine Station 7 for processing. Do not deviate from the assigned course or you will be fired upon." A squadron of sleek alien fighters appeared around them, their weapons clearly visible and ready to fire. Jake had no choice but to comply. The New Horizon was escorted deeper into Zephyrian space, past several heavily defended star systems. The quarantine station was a sterile utilitarian structure designed to process unknown visitors without contaminating Zephyrian space. Jake, Lisa, and Amy were transported aboard under heavy guard and brought before a Zephyrian official. The Zephyrian was tall and thin, with pale blue skin and large black eyes. He wore elaborate robes that seemed to shift color as he moved. When he spoke, his voice was melodious but cold. "I am Administrator Vex 9 of the Zephyrian Border Authority," he said. "You claim to be from an unknown species called humans. This is highly irregular. All spacefaring species are registered in our databases. We achieved faster-than-light travel only recently," Jake explained. "We are from a system called Sol, located in what you probably call the Orion Spur." Vex 9 consulted a holographic display. "The Orion Spur is considered primitive territory. No advanced civilizations have ever emerged from that region." "Well, one has now," Lisa said firmly. "We are here because we discovered the ruins of the Galactic Alliance. We want to know why no one responded to their call for help." The change in Vex 9's demeanor was immediate and dramatic. His pale skin turned even whiter, and his large eyes widened with what looked like fear. "You will not speak of such things," he said quickly, glancing around as if afraid someone might be listening. "That subject is forbidden in Zephyrian space." "Forbidden?" Amy repeated. "They were fighting to protect the entire galaxy. Why is it forbidden to talk about them?" Vex 9 stood up abruptly. "This interview is concluded. You will return to your ship and leave Zephyrian space immediately. Any further discussion of prohibited topics will result in your destruction." But Jake had seen something in the alien's eyes. Fear, yes, but also shame. "You received their message, did not you?" he pressed. "The Alliance called for help, and you chose to hide instead." "Security!" Vex 9 called out, but his voice cracked as he spoke. Guards rushed into the room, but Jake continued talking. "How many people died while you sat in your safe little systems and did nothing? How many worlds were destroyed while you pretended it was not your problem?" "Remove them!" Vex 9 shouted, but he could not meet Jake's eyes. As they were being escorted back to their ship, Amy managed to record a brief transmission from one of the guards. It was in the Zephyrian language, but Lisa was able to translate part of it later. "The ghost speakers have returned," the guard had whispered to his colleague. "They know about the failure." Back aboard the New Horizon, the crew sat in stunned silence as they processed what they had learned. "The failure," Lisa repeated. "That must be what they call the Alliance's destruction." "And ghost speakers," Danny added. "I think that is what they call anyone who talks about the Alliance." Jake stared out at the Zephyrian systems as they retreated to a safe distance. "They are ashamed. An entire civilization hiding from the memory of their cowardice." Over the following days, they attempted to make contact with several other civilizations that had received the Alliance's call for help. The results were always the same: fear, shame, and immediate ejection from their territory. Some species were more polite about it. Others were openly hostile, but none would discuss what had happened to the Galactic Alliance. "It is like the entire galaxy has agreed to pretend it never happened," Amy observed. "Except they cannot really forget," Lisa added. The shame is eating them alive. Did you see how that administrator reacted when we mentioned the Alliance? He looked like he was going to be sick. Jake pulled up the galactic map showing the locations of all the civilizations they had contacted. Thousands of systems, millions of worlds, billions of sentient beings, all of them living with the knowledge that they had abandoned the galaxy's protectors when they needed help the most. The New Horizon traveled deeper into the heart of what had once been Galactic Alliance territory. Jake Morrison had made a difficult decision. Before returning to Earth with their devastating discoveries, they needed to find the home world of the Volani. If there was any chance that someone had survived the destruction, they had to know. The journey took them through system after system of dead worlds. Each one told the same story of desperate final battles and ultimate defeat. But as they approached the coordinates Lisa Grant had extracted from the Volani database, they found something different. "Captain, I am detecting an energy signature from the fourth planet," Amy Carter reported from her communications station. "It is very faint, but it is definitely artificial." Jake studied the main display showing the Volani homeworld. It had once been a beautiful blue and green planet, similar to Earth but larger. Now it was a brown and gray wasteland, its atmosphere partially stripped away and its oceans mostly evaporated. "Life signs?" Jake asked. Lisa checked her sensors carefully. "Nothing on the surface. The planet is essentially dead, but there are some kind of artificial structures buried deep underground." Danny Rodriguez brought up the technical specifications on his engineering console. "The energy signature is coming from about 5 kilometers below the surface. Whatever is down there has been running on backup power for a very long time." Jake made the decision to investigate. They landed the New Horizon on what had once been a vast city but was now just ruins and rubble. The buildings were beautiful even in their destroyed state, with flowing organic curves that seemed to grow from the ground like plants. The away team consisted of Jake, Lisa, and Amy, all wearing heavy environmental suits. The atmosphere was thin and toxic, filled with radiation from the orbital bombardment that had destroyed the planet 2 centuries ago. They followed the energy readings to what appeared to be a massive bunker entrance, buried under tons of debris. Danny had to use the ship's mining equipment to clear a path down to the sealed doorway. "The door is responding to our presence," Lisa observed as they approached. "Some kind of proximity sensor is still active." The massive metal doors slid open with a grinding sound that spoke of centuries of neglect. Emergency lighting flickered on, revealing a long corridor that sloped downward into the planet's depths. "The air down here is better," Amy reported, checking her atmospheric sensors. "Still not breathable for humans, but much cleaner than the surface." They walked for nearly an hour through corridors and chambers that showed signs of hasty construction. This was not a normal building, but rather an emergency shelter built during the final days of the war. They passed storage rooms filled with supplies, communication centers with dead equipment, and living quarters designed to house thousands of refugees. "This place was built to survive a siege," Jake observed. "They were planning for a long war." At the deepest level of the complex, they found something that made them all stop in amazement. It was a vast chamber dominated by a single enormous machine that hummed with quiet power. The machine was covered in crystalline structures similar to what they had seen on the space station, but these were much larger and more complex. And standing in front of the machine was a figure that should not have existed. The being was tall and graceful, clearly a Villani, but its body was partially mechanical. Artificial limbs and organs had been integrated into its biological form, keeping it alive long past its natural lifespan. When it turned to face them, its eyes glowed with an inner light that was both beautiful and sad. "I have been waiting so long," the being said in perfect English. "So very long for someone to answer our call." Jake found his voice first. "You are Villani? You survived? I am Zorith, last keeper of the Villani archives. I am the only one left." The ancient being moved slowly toward them, its mechanical parts whirring softly with each step. "I have maintained myself through artificial means, hoping that someday someone would come." Lisa stepped forward, her scientific curiosity overcoming her shock. "How long have you been down here?" 237 years, 4 months, and 16 days, Zorith replied with mechanical precision. "I have counted every moment since the last of my people died." Amy activated her recording equipment. "We found your message. We found the space stations and the records of the Alliance. We know what happened here." Zorith's glowing eyes seemed to brighten. "Then you know that we called for help. We sent our plea to every civilized species in the galaxy." "We know," Jake said quietly. "And we know that no one came." The ancient Villani was silent for a long moment. When he spoke again, his voice carried the weight of centuries of grief and disappointment. 3,000 civilizations received our message. Species we had traded with for millennia, races we had helped achieve spaceflight, governments we had saved from countless disasters. Not one of them responded. Zorith led them to a section of the chamber where holographic displays showed the final days of the Alliance. The images were heartbreaking. Evacuation ships fleeing dying worlds, children being separated from their parents, entire species making their final stand against an enemy that seemed impossible to defeat. "The consuming darkness is not like any normal enemy," Zorith explained. "It exists partially outside our dimension, feeding on the life force of living worlds. The Alliance had fought it for over 50,000 years, using ancient technology and the combined military might of 12 species." "What went wrong?" Lisa asked. "The barriers that contained it began to fail. We think it learned to adapt to our containment methods. When we realized we could not stop it alone, we reached out to every spacefaring civilization we knew of." Zorith activated another display showing the galaxy-wide communication network. "We offered to share all our technology. We promised resources, trade agreements, even full membership in the Alliance. All we asked for was military assistance." "But no one responded," Jake said. "Worse than that," Zorith replied, his mechanical voice filled with bitterness. "Many of them actively fled. Entire civilizations packed up their populations and retreated to distant galaxies. Others built massive hiding places and sealed themselves away. A few even sent messages telling us to solve our own problems." Amy checked her recording equipment. to make sure it was capturing everything. What happened to the Alliance species? We fought alone. For 53 years, we held the line against the consuming darkness, while 3,000 civilizations watched from the safety of their distant homes. One by one, the Alliance members fell. The holographic display showed the systematic destruction of each Alliance species. The Marani, master engineers who had built the greatest defensive installations in the galaxy. The Throxy, warriors who had never lost a battle in 10,000 years of warfare. The Vellani themselves, keepers of knowledge and builders of the communication networks that had held the galaxy together. How did you survive when the others did not? Jake asked. I did not survive, Zorith replied. I died with the rest of my people. What you see before you is a fusion of biological memory and mechanical systems. I am as much machine as I am Vellani now. The ancient being led them to another section of the archive, where massive data crystals stored the accumulated knowledge of the Alliance. Before I die, I must pass on what we learned. The consuming darkness was not destroyed when the Alliance fell. It was merely satisfied for a time. What do you mean? Lisa asked, though she was beginning to suspect the answer. It feeds on life force, but it also grows stronger with each world it consumes. When the Alliance fell, it had absorbed the life energy of thousands of worlds and billions of sentient beings. It retreated to digest this feast, but it will return. Zorith activated a galactic projection showing the spread of the consuming darkness over time. According to our calculations, it has been dormant for approximately 200 years. But it will begin expanding again soon, and when it does, it will be far stronger than before. How much stronger? Jake asked. Strong enough to consume the entire galaxy within a few centuries. The barriers the Alliance maintained are gone. There is nothing left to slow its advance. Amy looked at the projection showing the predicted expansion of the consuming darkness. What about all those civilizations that refuse to help? What happens to them? They will die, Zorith said simply. All of them. The Zephyrians, the ethereal collective, the hegemony of Keth. Every species that chose safety over courage. The consuming darkness will find them eventually, no matter how far they run or how deep they hide. Lisa studied the technical data flowing across the displays. Is there any way to stop it? The Alliance spent 50,000 years developing weapons and defenses against the consuming darkness. All of that knowledge is stored here in the archives, but it would require a massive coordinated effort involving multiple spacefaring civilizations. The Fut, same civilizations that refused to help before, Jake pointed out. Yes. And they are even less likely to help now. They have spent 2 centuries convincing themselves that they made the right choice. They have built entire cultures around the lie that the Alliance's destruction was inevitable. For 3 weeks, the crew of the New Horizon remained on the dead Vellani homeworld, learning secrets that would change humanity forever. Zorith, the last survivor of the Galactic Alliance, shared knowledge that represented 50,000 years of accumulated wisdom and technological advancement. Jake Morrison stood in the vast archive chamber, watching as holographic displays showed him the true scope of what the Alliance had accomplished. The defensive installations they had built were beyond anything humans had ever imagined. Weapons that could destroy entire fleets with a single shot, shields that could protect whole star systems from attack, technology that seemed like magic compared to Earth's primitive quantum fold drives. "Your species learns quickly," Zorth observed as Lisa Grant studied the technical specifications for an Alliance battle cruiser. "Most civilizations take centuries to understand even the basic principles of dimensional physics. We have had good teachers," Lisa replied, not looking up from the complex equations scrolling across her display. "Though I have to admit some of this is still beyond our current understanding." Amy Carter was working with the communications technology, learning how the Alliance had maintained contact across thousands of star systems. "The quantum entanglement communication system is incredible. Instant communication across any distance, with no delay or signal degradation. That was one of our most important innovations," Zorth explained. "Coordinating the defense of multiple star systems simultaneously required perfect communication. Even a few seconds of delay could mean the difference between victory and defeat." Danny Rodriguez was fascinated by the Alliance's engineering capabilities. "These construction techniques could revolutionize everything we build. Programmable matter, self-assembling structures, energy-to-matter conversion. We could build entire fleets in a fraction of the time it takes us now. But as amazing as the technology was, it was the strategic information that truly opened their eyes to the scale of the threat they were facing. The consuming darkness is not just a single entity," Zorth explained as he showed them detailed analysis files. "It is more like a collective consciousness made up of thousands of individual beings that exist partially outside our dimension." The holographic display showed the enemy in its true form. Dark, flowing shapes that moved through space like living shadows. They could phase in and out of normal reality at will, making them nearly impossible to target with conventional weapons. "How did the Alliance fight something like that?" Jake asked. "With great difficulty and enormous cost," Zorth replied. "We developed weapons that could affect entities existing in multiple dimensions simultaneously. Quantum disruption cannons, reality anchors, dimensional mines. Each one required massive amounts of energy and exotic materials." Lisa studied the weapon specifications with growing amazement and concern. "The power requirements for these weapons are enormous. A single quantum disruption cannon uses more energy than Earth's entire civilization produces in a year." "The Alliance controlled thousands of star systems," Zorth reminded her. "We had access to the combined industrial output of 12 highly advanced civilizations. Even then, we struggled to produce enough weapons to fight effectively." Amy looked up from her communication studies. "How did you coordinate the defense of so many systems?" The Alliance territory covered a significant portion of the galaxy. "Through careful planning and the sacrifice of individual systems for the greater good," Zorth answered sadly. "We could not defend everything equally. Some worlds were designated as fortress systems, heavily defended and used as bases for counterattacks. Others were evacuated and left to fall, buying time for the rest." The strategic displays showed the Alliance's final campaign against the consuming darkness. It was a fighting retreat that lasted over 50 years, with the Alliance forces falling back from system to system as they lost ground to an enemy that seemed to grow stronger with each victory. The hardest part was abandoning inhabited worlds, Zorth continued. Billions of people died because we could not spare the resources to defend their systems. Every retreat meant leaving someone behind to face the darkness alone. Jake studied the battle maps showing the Alliance's last stand. You held out for 50 years after sending the call for help. Why did no one respond in all that time? We asked ourselves that question every day, Zorth replied, his mechanical voice heavy with old pain. We monitored the civilizations we had contacted, watching for any sign that they were preparing to assist us. Instead, we saw them actively retreating further away from Alliance territory. The holographic display showed the galactic map during the final years of the war. While the Alliance fought desperately against the consuming darkness, the 3,000 civilizations that had received their plea for help were moving in the opposite direction. Entire species relocated to distant regions of the galaxy. Others built massive defensive installations around their own territories, clearly intended to protect only themselves. Some of them sent messages, Zorth added bitterly. Not offers of help, but demands that we contain the consuming darkness within Alliance territory. They seem to think we could somehow sacrifice ourselves to save them. Amy shook her head in disgust. They wanted you to die for them, but they would not lift a finger to help you survive. That is an accurate summary of the galaxy's response to our crisis, Zorth confirmed. Danny was studying the technical specifications for the Alliance's final defensive installations. These barrier generators are incredible. They created a network of energy fields that could slow the consuming darkness's advance. The barrier network was our greatest achievement and our ultimate failure, Zorth explained. It took us 10,000 years to build and required constant maintenance from all 12 Alliance species. When we began losing systems to the consuming darkness, we could no longer maintain the barriers properly. What happened when the barriers failed? Lisa asked. The consuming darkness broke through our final defensive line and spread across all Alliance territory within 5 years. Worlds that had been protected for millennia fell in a matter of months. The displays showed the horrifying final collapse of the Alliance, system after system going dark as the consuming darkness consumed everything in its path. The last communications from dying worlds were desperate pleas for help that would never come. My people were among the last to fall, Zorth said quietly. We maintained the archive network until the very end, hoping that our knowledge would survive even if we did not. Jake looked around the vast chamber filled with the accumulated wisdom of 12 civilizations. And now you are offering all of this to humanity. I am offering you the chance to succeed where we failed, Zorth corrected. But you must understand what that means. The consuming darkness has been dormant for 2 centuries, growing stronger by absorbing the life force of the worlds it conquered. When it awakens, it will be more powerful than ever before. How long do we have? Amy asked. Zorth consulted data displays showing energy readings from across the galaxy. Based on the current expansion of dark energy signatures, I estimate between 5 and 10 years before it begins actively spreading again. That is not much time to prepare, Danny observed. No, it is not. The Alliance had 50,000 years to develop their technology and strategies. Humanity will have less than a decade. Lisa was studying the weapon manufacturing requirements. Even with all this knowledge, we could never build enough ships and weapons to fight the consuming darkness alone. We would need help from other civilizations. The same civilizations that abandoned the Alliance, Jake pointed out. Yes, Zorith agreed. And that is why your species may be the galaxy's last hope. The Alliance was made up of ancient, established civilizations that had grown comfortable with their power and status. When the crisis came, they expected others to solve it for them. But the other species were cowards, Amy said. They were afraid, Zorith corrected. Fear makes people do terrible things, but it can also motivate them to do great things if they are led properly. The 3,000 civilizations that ignored our call are still out there, and they know the consuming darkness will come for them eventually. Jake began to understand what Zorith was suggesting. You think humanity could convince them to fight this time? You are the only species that answered our call, even though it came 2 centuries too late. You traveled across the galaxy to learn the truth about what happened here. That kind of courage and determination is exactly what the galaxy needs. But we are just one species, Danny protested. We have barely mastered interstellar travel. The Alliance started the same way, Zorith reminded him. 12 individual species that chose to work together for something greater than themselves. If humanity can convince even a few of the coward civilizations to join you, it might be enough. Lisa looked up from her technical studies. What makes you think they would listen to us? We are completely unknown to most of them. Because you will be offering them something the Alliance never could, Zorith replied. A second chance. The opportunity to redeem themselves for their greatest failure. Amy was studying the communication records from the Alliance's final days. Some of these species have been hiding for over 2 centuries. They might not even remember how to fight. The Global Space Council chamber in Geneva was completely silent as Jake Morrison finished his presentation. For 2 hours, he had shared everything they had discovered during their 6-month journey across the galaxy. The ruins of the Galactic Alliance. The 3,000 civilizations that had ignored their call for help. The ancient Villani survivor who had waited over 2 centuries for someone to answer. And now, the assembled representatives of Earth's governments faced the most important decision in human history. Let me make sure I understand this correctly, said Director Helen Barnes of the Earth Defense Initiative. You are telling us that there is an ancient enemy somewhere out there that destroyed 12 advanced civilizations, and it will eventually come for Earth. That is correct, Jake replied. The consuming darkness has been dormant for 200 years, but according to Zorith's calculations, it will begin expanding again within the next decade. President Chen of the Pacific Federation leaned forward in his chair. And you believe humanity should take on the responsibility of fighting this thing, even though we have barely mastered interstellar travel. I believe humanity should take on the responsibility of giving the galaxy a second chance, Jake corrected. We are not strong enough to fight the consuming darkness alone, but we might be able to convince other civilizations to join us. Lisa Grant activated the holographic display showing the Alliance's technological database. The knowledge that Zorith shared with us could advance human technology by thousands of years. We could build ships and weapons that would make us one of the most powerful civilizations in the galaxy. Or we could use that same technology to hide like everyone else did, pointed out General Martinez of the American Space Command. Build better defenses around Earth and hope the consuming darkness never finds us. Amy Carter stepped forward with her communication records. I have been monitoring signals from the civilizations that abandoned the Alliance. Many of them are showing signs of internal conflict and social breakdown, living with the shame of their cowardice is destroying them from within. That is their problem, said Minister Petrov of the European Union. Our responsibility is to protect humanity, not to solve the galaxy's problems. Danny Rodriguez pulled up the technical specifications for the Alliance's defensive installations. The problem is that hiding will not work forever. The consuming. Darkness does not just destroy individual worlds. It corrupts entire regions of space. Even if we built the perfect hiding place, it would find us eventually. The debate continued for hours. Some representatives argued for immediate military mobilization. Others demanded that humanity evacuate to a distant galaxy. A few suggested trying to negotiate with the other civilizations before making any major decisions. Finally, Secretary General Williams called for order. This decision is too important to rush. I am calling for a global referendum. Every human being on Earth and in the colonies will have the opportunity to vote on how our species responds to this crisis. The referendum campaign lasted 3 months. Jake, Lisa, Amy, and Danny traveled around the world, sharing their story and the evidence they had collected. They spoke at universities, military academies, and government assemblies. They appeared on news programs and documentary films. They showed the world what they had found in the ruins of the Galactic Alliance. The response was unlike anything in human history. Millions of people volunteered for military service, even though they knew it meant facing an enemy that had destroyed civilizations millions of years more advanced than Earth. Engineering schools reported record enrollment as students rushed to learn the new technologies Zorith had shared. Shipyards began expanding their facilities in preparation for the massive construction projects that would be needed. But there was also significant opposition. Entire political movements formed around the idea that humanity should hide rather than fight. Some religious groups declared that the consuming darkness was a divine punishment that could not be stopped. Others argued that taking on the Alliance's mission was an act of insane pride that would doom the human race. The most vocal opposition came from Dr. Richard Stone, a prominent physicist who had studied the Alliance data and concluded that victory was impossible. The mathematics are clear, Stone declared during a televised debate with Jake. The Alliance had 12 species, thousands of years of advanced technology, and control of vast resources. They fought for 50 years and still lost. How can humanity possibly succeed where they failed? Because we will not be fighting alone, Jake replied. The Alliance expected help from 3,000 civilizations and received none. We know those civilizations exist, and we know they are ashamed of their failure. Some of them might be ready to make amends. And if they refuse to help us, just like they refuse to help the Alliance, then we fight anyway, Jake said simply. because someone has to. As the referendum date approached, polls showed the vote would be extremely close. The decision that would determine humanity's future hung in the balance. 3 days before the vote, something happened that changed everything. Amy Carter was monitoring deep space communications when she detected an unusual signal. It was coming from the direction of the former Alliance territory, but it was not one of the automated distress beacons they had found before. "Jake, you need to see this," Amy called out from her workstation at the Space Council headquarters. The signal was weak and badly distorted, but it was clearly artificial. More importantly, it was recent. Someone or something was actively transmitting from the dead zone where the Alliance had fallen. "Can you clean up the signal?" Jake asked. Amy worked for several hours, using techniques she had learned from studying Alliance communication technology. Gradually, the static cleared and a voice emerged from the cosmic background noise. It was Zorith. "To the humans who answered our call," the ancient Villani's mechanical voice said across the vast distances of space, "I have detected signs that the consuming darkness is beginning to stir. The dormant period is ending ahead of schedule. You have perhaps 5 years before it begins active expansion again." The message continued with technical data about energy, readings Zorith had detected from deep space. The consuming darkness was indeed awakening, and when it did, it would be stronger than ever before. "I am transmitting this message to you because I believe your species represents the galaxy's last hope," Zorith's voice said. "The Alliance failed because we fought alone. You must not make the same mistake. Use the knowledge I have given you, but more importantly, use it to unite others in this fight." The final part of the message was a complete database of the 3,000 civilizations that had received the Alliance's original call for help. Not just their locations, but detailed information about their cultures, their technologies, and their military capabilities. "This is everything the Alliance knew about the species that abandoned us," Zorith explained. "Study them, understand them, and then show them what it means to have courage." The message ended with coordinates for a hidden Alliance facility that Zorith had not mentioned before. "If you choose to fight, come to these coordinates. I will share with you the Alliance's greatest weapon, something we never had the chance to use." Jake immediately called an emergency session of the Global Space Council. The news that the consuming darkness was awakening early spread around the world within hours. The effect on the referendum was immediate and dramatic. Support for military action surged as people realized that humanity's time to prepare was running out. The abstract threat of a distant enemy had suddenly become an urgent crisis that demanded immediate action. When the votes were counted, the result was decisive. 71% of humanity voted to take up the Alliance's mission and fight the consuming darkness. Within hours of the referendum results being announced, volunteers began flooding recruitment centers around the world. The response was overwhelming. Young people canceled their college plans to join the military. Experienced engineers left comfortable jobs to work on weapons development. Even retired veterans came forward to offer their expertise. President Chen addressed the world from the United Nations headquarters in New York. Today, humanity has chosen courage over fear, action over inaction. We will not hide from this threat. We will not abandon our responsibility to the galaxy. We will answer the call that 3,000 other civilizations ignored. The mobilization began immediately. Construction of new shipyards started within days. Research facilities were built to study Alliance technology. Training programs were established to prepare crews for ships that did not yet exist. But Jake knew that building ships and weapons would not be enough. The real challenge would be convincing the galaxy's coward civilizations to join the fight. Lisa, I want you to prepare a complete analysis of the civilizations in Zorith's database, Jake said as they prepared for their next mission. We need to understand what motivates them, what they fear, and what might convince them to fight. Already working on it, Lisa replied. Some of these species have been hiding for so long that they might have forgotten how to wage war. Others are so advanced that they could probably destroy the consuming darkness single-handedly if they chose to try. 2 years had passed since humanity voted to take up the Alliance's mission, and the transformation of human civilization was nothing short of miraculous. Admiral Beth Collins stood on the bridge of the newly constructed flagship Terra's Hope, watching as the largest military fleet in human history prepared for departure. The ship was a fusion of human engineering and Alliance technology, sleek and powerful in ways that would have been impossible just a few years earlier. Around them, over 300 vessels of various sizes floated in formation, each one armed with weapons that could destroy entire enemy fleets. "Fleet status report," Beth called out to her operations officer. "All ships report ready for departure." "Admiral," came the reply. "We have 47 battlecruisers, 112 destroyers, 85 support vessels, and 60 specialized craft equipped with Alliance dimensional weaponry." Jake Morrison, now serving as Beth's chief diplomatic advisor, studied the holographic display showing their fleet composition. It was impressive by human standards, but he knew it would not be nearly enough to fight the consuming darkness alone. "Any word from the advanced scout teams?" Beth asked. Lisa Grant, who had been promoted to chief science officer for the entire operation, checked her communications console. Team 7 reports successful contact with the Andromedans. They are interested in our proposal but want to see proof of our capabilities before committing any forces. What about the others? "Mixed results," Jake replied, reviewing the diplomatic reports. The Crystalline Federation agreed to provide technical support, but no military assistance. The hegemony of Keth threw our ambassadors out of their territory. The Zephyrians are still refusing to even discuss the alliance. Amy Carter, now serving as Fleet Communications Director, looked up from her console. "We are receiving a priority transmission from Earth Command." The holographic display activated to show General Martinez back on Earth. "Admiral Collins, I am pleased to report that we have just completed construction of the first dimensional barrier generator. The test was successful." Beth smiled grimly. The dimensional barriers were based on Alliance technology that Zorith had shared with them. If they worked properly, they could slow the advance of the consuming darkness and buy time for evacuations. "How many barrier generators can we produce?" Beth asked. At current manufacturing rates, we can build approximately 50 units per year. Each one can protect a single star system, but they require massive amounts of exotic matter to operate, MQ did the mathematics in his head. With over 200 star systems in human space, it would take decades to build enough barriers to protect their entire civilization, and that assumed the consuming darkness would wait patiently for them to finish. What about the Alliance weapon that Zorith promised us? Beth asked. Danny Rodriguez, who had become the fleet's chief engineer, pulled up the technical specifications they had recovered from Zorith's hidden facility. The reality anchor is complete and installed on Terra's Hope. It is unlike anything we have ever seen. The reality anchor was the Alliance's most advanced weapon, designed specifically to fight entities that existed across multiple dimensions. It could lock the consuming darkness into normal space, making it vulnerable to conventional weapons. The problem is that we only have one, Danny continued. Zorith's facility contained the blueprints, but manufacturing another reality anchor would take at least 5 years with our current industrial capacity. Then we had better make sure we do not lose this one, Beth replied. The fleet's mission was ambitious and dangerous. They would travel to the border regions where the consuming darkness was beginning to expand again, establish a defensive line, and attempt to contain its advance while diplomats worked to convince other civilizations to join the fight. Intelligence reports from Zorith indicated that the consuming darkness had begun testing its strength against the weakened barriers around former Alliance territory. Entire star systems had gone dark in the past 6 months, consumed by an enemy that was growing stronger with each victory. Admiral, we are receiving a transmission from the Ethereal Collective, Amy announced. The communication came through on the encrypted diplomatic channel that Jake had established with various galactic civilizations. The Ethereal Collective was one of the most advanced species in the galaxy, but they had retreated to pocket dimensions during the Alliance's final war. Human fleet, this is Sage Vanis of the Ethereal Collective, came the translated message. We have monitored your preparations with interest. We wish to discuss a potential alliance. Beth and Jake exchanged glances. The Ethereal Collective possessed technology that could be crucial to fighting the consuming darkness, but they were also known for their complex political requirements. Open a channel, Beth ordered. The main display activated to show a being of pure energy contained within a crystalline matrix. The ethereal had no physical form in the traditional sense, existing as conscious energy that could manipulate matter and space. Admiral Collins, Sage Vanis said in a voice like music, we have observed your species' remarkable progress in such a short time. The Alliance technology you have integrated with your own innovations shows great promise. We appreciate your interest, Sage Vanis, Beth replied diplomatically. Humanity is prepared to share our knowledge and resources with any civilization willing to fight the consuming darkness. That is precisely what we wish to discuss. The Ethereal Collective has spent 2 centuries in self-imposed exile, contemplating our failure to assist the Alliance. Many of us believe the time has come to make amends for that decision. Jake leaned forward in his chair. This was the breakthrough they had been hoping for. If the ethereal collective joined the fight, their advanced technology could level the playing field significantly. "What would you require from us?" Jake asked. "Proof that this effort will not end in the same failure as the Alliance," Sage Vanis replied. "We have seen the projections. Even with our assistance, the probability of victory against the consuming darkness remains very low." Lisa activated a display showing their strategic analysis. "We are not planning to fight the same war the Alliance fought. Our strategy is based on mobility and coordination rather than static defense." Explain. "The Alliance tried to hold territory and protect fixed positions," Beth explained. "They were forced to fight on multiple fronts simultaneously, spreading their forces too thin. We plan to concentrate our forces and strike at the consuming darkness's weak points." "And what do you consider to be its weak points?" Danny pulled up the technical analysis they had developed based on Alliance records. "The consuming darkness operates as a collective consciousness, but individual units can be separated from the whole. If we can disrupt their communication network, we can isolate and destroy smaller groups. This strategy requires precise coordination and perfect timing," Sage Vanis observed. "One mistake could result in your entire fleet being consumed." "Yes," Jake agreed. "But sitting in hiding until the consuming darkness finds us guarantees defeat. At least this way we have a chance." Sage Vanis was silent for several minutes, apparently consulting with other members of the ethereal collective. When the communication resumed, the energy being's form seemed brighter. "The collective has reached a decision. We will provide you with 12 of our most advanced vessels and technical support for your dimensional weapons. In return, we ask for access to the Alliance historical records you recovered." "Agreed," Beth said immediately. "There is one additional condition," Sage Vanis continued. "If this campaign fails, the ethereal collective will retreat to our deepest, dimensional sanctuaries. We will not make the same mistake twice." Jake felt a chill at those words. Even with their support, the ethereal collective was planning for failure. But he also understood their position. They had lived with the shame of abandoning the Alliance for 2 centuries. They would not risk their entire civilization again. "We understand," Beth replied. "When can your ships join our fleet?" "They are already en route. You should detect their approach within the hour." The communication ended, leaving the human fleet command team to process what had just happened. In a single conversation, they had doubled their firepower and gained access to technology that was even more advanced than what the Alliance had possessed. "That is 1 down, 2,999 to go," Amy said wryly. "Every civilization that joins us makes it easier to convince the next one," Jake pointed out. "The ethereal collective's support will carry significant weight with other species." "Admiral, I am detecting multiple ships approaching on an intercept course," called out the sensor operator. The main display showed 12 vessels unlike anything in human experience. They appeared to be made of the same crystalline material as the ethereal beings themselves, shifting and flowing as they moved through space. Each ship was easily the size of a human battle cruiser, but their energy signatures suggested capabilities far beyond conventional vessels. "Ethereal Fleet, this is Admiral Collins," Beth transmitted. "Welcome to the Alliance. Admiral Collins, this is Crystal Commander Thyrus," came the reply. "We are honored to fight alongside the species that answered the call when no one else would, as the ethereal vessels took